live stream? Not yet. Because I want you guys to have every lecture recorded. So you guys can come back. Okay. Please inform me if it's open, if it's up already. Communications. And let's do a sound check first. Can you say something, Mark? Oh, I can't hear you. Okay, so there's something.
Hello.
Ah, there. All right. Okay. Nasaan ang ibang students? Gusto kong makita ang ano. Di ba ang usapan natin mag-start na ano, start ng lecture natin, dapat naka-ano kayo, naka-video call kayo. Ayan na si Eliza talaga. Ayan na si Eliza. Hi, James. All right. What about Marivic Sastre? What about Razilin Gaspar? What about the other ones? Okay. So, ay gusto ko yung lighting dun sa isa. Sino yun? May violet. Ayan. Ayan ang aking anak number 1, Junakis. Hello, Junakis. I have not heard from you for a very long time. How have you been? I want to ask you, and I want you to answer. I want you to answer via audio. O talaga ha? Basta hand signals ka lang sa akin ha?
Birthday ko po kasi last week.
Ayon, kaya wala sa lecture ko. Okay, sige. Anyway, wishing you a belated happy birthday, anak. I'm sorry, hindi pa nakapagpadala ng ng bigas at kanin at ang fried chicken na nire-request mo. But hopefully, you are doing well and are prepared for today's lecture. Okay, so let's start with protozoan. So as I mentioned before, we're going to discuss Rhizopoda, Ciliata, and Mastigophora. So Rhizopoda, any organism that you would consider to have flagella. No, not flagella. Sorry, pseudomembranous. They are basically amoeba. Okay, so they move via pseudopods. Okay, ciliata, from the name itself, they move via the usage of an accessory organelle or organ, which is a cilia. Okay, and we're going to discuss only one organism related to that family, related to that phylum, and family Mastigophora, which is basically your flagellates. Okay, there is another lecture, which is your Plasmodia and Toxoplasma, which, if we have time, we'll discuss later. Okay, so clear? All right, so that's basically the objectives of the lecture. You are required to understand little bit of facts and factoids. In your exam, you might be given cases about these things, and you might even, if you're going to take the licensure exams or certification exams abroad, you might be expected to answer slide questions, like they're going to show you a picture of an organism and they're going to ask, what is this? Okay, so AACP usually are the ones. AIMS for Australia, and I'm not sure for the UK. I think HCPC exams are conducted in the UK, so you might be expected to also answer that under the topic of microbiology specialized exams. Okay, now let's start with the structures. So the structures are pretty straightforward, as with any parasite that we've talked about so far. What is the structure of procurement of nutrients in a protozoa? It is a cytostome. Okay, a cytopage is basically the anus of the organism. It's used for the discharge of metabolites. Okay, so there's two questions here: nutrient procurement and discharge of metabolic waste. So basically, this is where they poop. The cytopage. Okay, cytostome for procurement of nutrients, cytopage for discharge of metabolites. Okay, I already sent Mr. Flores your advanced lectures, and let me just check with Let me just check
Yes, sir.
with...
Ngayon mo lang sinend.
Ay, ngayon lang. Yeah. Alam mo naman tayo, late, di ba? Terribly sorry, sir. Alam mo naman, Turkish tea. Alright? Anyway, please do send it to our lovely students if you have time. Okay? Thank you, sir. Have a nice day. Okay. So, all right. So our next structure that we're going to talk, the next thing that we need to talk about is encystation and excistation. Okay? Encystation is basically it's going from the trophic stage to the cystic stage. So this is where you see a trophic organism and it becomes a cyst. Okay, and then excistation is basically the opposite. So I think Amanda will appreciate this little effort that the little effort that I put here. When you hear the word exit, it's exiting from the cyst stage. Okay, so exiting the cyst stage. Okay, Amanda, if you're here, please, Amanda, show yourself. Okay, so this is some. So the shortcut that I would give to you guys is encystation. Basically, it's turning from trophozoite to cyst, and existation, exiting the cyst stage, meaning they go from cyst to a trophozoite. Okay? So clear? Clear, clear, clear? James Paul? Clear? All right. Okay. Di nag-respond si James Paul, so apparently he is probably doing something else. Anyway, let's move on. What are the two types of encystation, sorry. We have protective and reproductive. Pretty straightforward again. Brief description on each. You need to understand brief description on each. Protective, basically, it's protecting itself against unfavorable conditions outside the host or inside the upper GIT. Why the upper GIT? Why do you think the upper GIT needs to be a protective one? Why is it that exposure to the upper GI tract is important for cysts? For a cyst to survive. Sige nga. Sige. Valiant.
High acidity po.
Very good. And of course, if you're going to the small intestine, there are a lot of enzymatic molecules there that can break down the surface of your cysts. So it needs to be a developed mechanism for the organism to survive. All right. So encystation. Now, reproductive one is basically easy. Cellular division increases the number of trophozoites after excistation. So basically, you're going to see organisms like these in many cases, particularly in the family of Entamoeba histolytica, and everything. So you get to see nucleoli increase there, certain increases in nucleoli. All right. Now, let's move on to the locomotion apparatus. They call it a locomotion apparatus. They call it also as a movement apparatus. They call it as a movement organelle. Okay, let's not beat around the bush, and let's just say it's the way it's. Let's go into simpler terms. Pseudopodia is used for the movement of these organisms. Okay, they rely on pseudopods. Okay, they rely on pseudopods. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, next. Two types of reproductive processes undergone by protozoa. So remember that there are two types of reproductive processes done by a protozoa. So it's called there is either asexual and there is sexual. Okay, so for asexual reproduction, it's known as binary fission. So obviously, when we say the word binary fission, it means that it does not require two cells. For sexual reproduction, it requires the union of two cells. This is also known as syngamy. Okay? Syngamy. All right? So definition of terms, hopefully you remember these things. Now, differentiate cyst and trophozoite based on motility. I asked this question a couple of years ago to one of my students. Is there a difference between the movement or the way an organism moves, whether it's in the cystic stage or on the trophic stage? The answer says yes, sir. Okay, please tell me. So the student answered me, a trophozoite moves using a pseudopod, while a cyst moves using a cilia. So what do you think is wrong there? What do you think is wrong there? Could you guys give me brief correction for that student's answer? A couple of years ago. So obviously there's something wrong. Who here can give me an answer? What about Junakis number 2? Unahin ko yung mga Junakis ko. Alexis. What's wrong in my previous student's statement?
Yung sa part po na sinabi niya yung sa cilia po.
Yeah, right. Okay, so why? Why is it wrong?
Parasites don't have cilia, sir.
Parasites don't have cilia. We just mentioned earlier we have ciliata, phylum ciliata, right? So, okay, bit of review, okay, anak, all right, all right. What about my firstborn?
Yung cyst po, it's na a non-motile stage. So, hindi po talaga siya magkakaroon ng cilia. Pero
Very good.
pwede siya magkaroon ng cilia with its trophocyte.
All right. Okay. So yeah, in terms of yeah, very good, very good, very good. So walang favoritism, Alexis. Ha? You're still my Junakis. I love you equally the same. All right. Okay. So very good. So what he said was correct, except for cilia. Okay. Again, I mentioned before the family Ciliata. There is only one organism that we're going to talk about, and please, guys, remember and write it on your notes right now. Balantidium coli. Alright? Balantidium coli. That's the only one that we're going to discuss with Celia, okay? On its trophic stage. Very good. His first statement is actually correct. A cyst is immotile because it's basically just a circular structure that does not move or do anything. It's either used for again as I mentioned before, it's only used for reproduction or for protective purposes, to survive or to reproduce. Okay, that's the major function. A trophozoite is basically the one that is motile. Okay, so those are the two things that you guys need to remember. So basic foundations on biology or biological mechanisms of certain organisms is important in this particular lecture. Okay, so everything you've learned from your high school biology to your general biology in your first years or second years. I'm not really sure because students are studying at a different pace right now from my generation. So hopefully you guys have a good understanding on the basics of biological functions and biological functions, or basically physiology itself of other organisms. Okay, now let's talk about feeding stage and infective stage. All right. So for amoeba, we're going to talk about amoeba only, or rhizopods. Okay. So in family Rhizopoda, the feeding stage is trophozoite. I think in every organism that we're going to discuss as after this lecture, we're going to talk about cyst as the infective stage and trophozoites as the feeding stage. But when you look at the stool, you will still see trophozoites, and you may see it concurrently in when you go to the laboratory. You might see them together. Okay? So hindi pwede yung sir, cyst lang yung trophozoites. Hindi pwede. Pwede mo siya makita at the same time. Okay? Especially in cases where there's heavy infection. Alright? Or reactivation of a specific organism. Okay? Now, I posed a question to one of my students, to a class that I've been teaching a couple of years ago. And hopefully you guys can answer this question for me. I'll leave this answer for you guys. I'll leave this to you answer. It's a true or false question. I just need to see if the class still has a great understanding of their college parasitology lectures. Third year parasitology lectures. True or false? Amoebiasis or amoebiasis is a lifelong disorder. Okay, true or false? Want to see if people here understood. This is not related to medtech questions, but let me just see if you guys remembered your lectures. True or false? Amoeba. You can answer it on the chat. I'll look at it. I'll look into it later. It is a lifelong disorder. Okay. When I say lifelong disorder, it's like having diabetes, right? DM1. You get infected once, it doesn't go away anymore. Let me see if you guys can answer this question. Okay? All right, you can Google. Don't worry. Okay? So, feeding stage of amoeba is the trophic stage or trophozoite stage. Trophozoite. Cyst is basically the infective stage. Okay? Cysts are infective stages. All right. Now, let's talk about amoeba or the family Rhizopoda. Okay? Rhizopoda. Not to be confused with your mycology lectures later. Rhizopus is a different one. Okay? Rhizopoda. Okay? All right, now enumerate the life cycle stages of amoeba. It's pretty straightforward. TPCM or trophic stage, precystic, cystic, and metacystic stages. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, trophic stage, precystic, cystic, and metacystic. Okay, all you need to remember: trophic stage is the only one. Cyst, and meta. Similar to I think it's quite close to your discussions in hematology, like pre like promonocyte, monocyte, and something like that. So it's almost similar like that. So hopefully Amanda remembers this one because I'm always shouting out to Amanda because she always has the audacity to ask, "Sir, paano ma-memorize 'yan?" Okay, the audacity, the cheek, the nerve, the gall, the gumption, di ba? All right. Now, all amoebic stages, all amoeba or all members of the family rhizopoda have cystic stages except for what species. So this one is something that you need to remember because you might be asked this question. Please put a start on this one, and the answer is of course Entamoeba gingivalis. Okay, or gingivalis, depending on how you pronounce it. Again, it doesn't matter how you pronounce it as long as you remember the correct answer or the correct spelling of the answer. You're going to be answering multiple choice most of the time. Okay? Now, all amoeba inhabit the large intestine except for what? Okay? Entamoeba gingivalis again. Alright? So, Entamoeba gingivalis. From the name itself, gingiva. Okay? Pero hindi na kayo mahirapan. Gingiva, siya lang yung nasa gingiva. Okay? Or mouth, or oral cavity. Okay? You will never see this in another organ in any other place aside from your gingival cavity, or your oral cavity. All right. Now, all amoeba are commensals except for. All right. So I'm going to ask this question to somebody in our class. Hopefully, this person gets the answer. All right. That is not the correct answer. I just accidentally clicked the. Sorry, the next button. All right. So all amoeba are commensals except for. Sige nga. Who can answer? All amoeba are commensals except for. Oops. Accidentally closed the slideshow. Who can answer? All amoeba are commensals except for.
Bakit tahimik lahat?
Kaya nga eh. Ano kayang
Gusto ko may sumasagot.
Oo.
Pag hindi face-to-face ang exam.
Nanakot si Sir Marco. Walang sumasagot. All amoeba are comments. This is basic, guys. Guys, this is basic. If you do not know the answer, oh my gosh.
This is like lesson number 1 in terms of protozoa.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, guys, if you do not know the answer, you might as well go back to third year to study parasitology. My goodness. Oh, anak, Alexis.
Entamoeba histolytica.
Very good. Oh my God, talagang nagmana talaga sa akin. Smart na, pretty pa. Di ba? Alright, very good. Alright, kayo talaga kailangan pa sinisindak ni Sir Marco eh. Ano ba? May paniniddak pang nagaganap. Ano ba? Biglang nagpakita. Isa pa Sir Marco, hindi pagsusubok ako, hindi sila naka yung iba hindi naka on ang what do you call this? Ang camera. Kayo talaga ha?
Ay nako. Sige, sa exam nyo kailangan naka-cosplay kayo.
Gusto nyo pinapahirapan kayo eh. -5 pag hindi naka-cosplay. Diyos ko, hirap na nga ng exam ninyo.
Tapos magiging essay yung exam.
Okay. Discuss the life cycle of a hookworm. Yung mga ganon.
Ay, Segi, di ba? Pinagawa ko na yun dati.
Totoo. Yung traditional PRC format. Swerte nga ninyo, multiple choice ang questions ninyo eh. Yung mga seniors ko sa laboratory, ganun daw yung exam nila noong mga around 90s. Diba? Discuss the life cycle of a hookworm daw, sabi niya. Anyway, let's go back to our lecture because we have a lot of stuff to cover. Okay, so Entamoeba histolytica is the correct answer. Again, as I mentioned before, if you do not know the answer to this question, please put a star to this one. Please. I implore you guys to put a star on this particular slide. All right? Clear? Clear? All right? This is basics. The basics of what do you call this? The basics of protozoans. All right, now let's talk about the stages of amoeba found in the following specimens. So for diarrheic stools, so of course we're going to see it in the trophic stages. Well-formed stools will have your cystic stages. Okay, cystic stages most of the time. All right. Nothing that much. Why trophic stage? A brief explanation is if we use our common sense, trophic stages are the ones that have that actually has the pseudopods, right? So they want to move around watery places. Okay. Of course, if it's a cyst, basically it doesn't want to move. So you're going to see it. You're going to see it in your well-formed stools. Okay, or formed stools. Okay. Walang hard na ano ha. Kaya inumpisahan ko na ha. Baka mamaya niyan pasakitin yung ulo ni Sir Marco ninyo sa ano nyo ha. Sa mga exam ninyo ay sa mga practicals ninyo ha. Walang maglalagay ng hard sa findings ng ano ha ng stool. Okay? Umpisahan ko na kayo. Pangunahan ko na kayo ha. Or rock hard, yung mga ganun na mga ano.
Pag sinundot mo ng applicator stick na mababali yung stick.
Nababali yung applicator stick. Walang ganun ha. Meron pa nga naglalagay dried. Ano ba? Class ha. Wag ganun ha. Alright? Walang gagawa ng ganun ha. Kukulamin ko kapag may gumawa ng ganun sa ano ni Sir Marco ha. Sir Marco, bigay mo lang sa akin yung name tapos kukulamin ko, babarangin ko kapag kami naggawa ng ganun. Okay? Anyway, let's move on to existation of amoeba. Existation of amoebic cyst occurs in what part or what organ? Basically, it's going let's just remove the in what organ na lang. Okay? I was still a youngin when I was preparing the slides. It's in the intestines, okay? Specifically the large intestines. They would inhabit the large intestines and they would exist there. Existation, okay? Sorry. So, all right, existation. So, again, what's the meaning of existation? E-exit siya sa cyst stage. Okay? E-exit siya sa cyst stage. So, ibig sabihin, from cyst to trophozoite siya. So, dun siya gagawa ng kababalaghan sa katawan mo. Okay? Alright? Okay? Next. Stains that we use to demonstrate amoeba. There's basically 3 that you need to remember. And in the hospital, you are going to see most probably iron hematoxylin or any variant of hematoxylin. Okay, but we need to discuss each, of course. The Anthony, iron hematoxylin, and quinine stain. The best stain for trophozoites is, of course, quinine. Actually, we have this in the laboratory before when I was working in a large hospital in I think in Riyadh. We have this one because we want to demonstrate it because we want to be sure the external quality control samples that we receive actually has trophozoites. So we want to see. We used quinine stain before. But it was phased out because of expiration. All right. Now, the Anthony stain is used mostly for fresh samples, and for permanent stains, of course, you need iron hematoxylin. In the Philippines, you're going to see iron hematoxylin stained permanent stains. Okay. Especially if you receive one from the Research Institute of Tropical Medicine, they're usually the ones who conduct from if I'm not mistaken, it's from San Lazaro, but Sir Marco, please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay? All right.
UPM.
UPM? Ah, yeah, UPM. Ah, okay. UP Manila. All right, thank you. Thank you for that correction. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I was in the Philippines. All right, so anyway, let's move on to the genus considered as true amoeba. Okay? So the genus that is considered as true amoeba that is considered as a true amoeba is Entamoeba. Okay? Characteristics is that it has a peripheral chromatin on both the trophozoites and the cysts, and it has chromatoidal bars on cysts only. Okay? So please remember these. This is the thing that if you're going to go to the exams or if you're going to cram for the exams and you have nothing else, if you have nothing else to do, okay? For example, tomorrow ng exam mo Valiant, wala ka talagang alam. Wala ka talagang maalala. Okay? Lagyan mo na ng star to. Okay? Sabi ko, ito yung sinabi ni Sir Manuel. Ito yung mga questions na high yield. Most of the time, they will ask this question in the board exams or in the exams that will follow. Okay? Or in even in case presentations. Okay? So you've seen a case presentation. Patient was admitted to the ER because of profuse diarrhea, blah blah blah. Iron hematoxylin was stained, revealing peripheral chromatin on both trophozoites and cysts. Okay, so those are the kinds of questions that you might encounter. All right, a chromatoidal bar is seen in the patient's blah blah blah, and then I'll discuss the morphology later. But that's basically what you're going to expect in your exams. Okay, so please put a star on this one. Okay, pag magka-cram ka ha, Valiant, minty fresh. Okay, please. Okay, ikaw din Mary ha, Mary or Quiz ha. Okay, please kung magka-cram ka, yan yung ano mo. It's very high yield. Okay, now. What amoeba is considered as a non-true amoeba? Of course, a non-true amoeba or not an amoeba, not considered as an amoeba, or basically when you say this, it does not cause any pathologies or pathological findings. It's basically Endolimax and Iodamoeba bushli. Okay, they have no chromatoidal bars and no peripheral chromatin. Hence, from the names itself, from the characteristics itself. Okay, non-true amoeba does not cause any pathologies. It does not have that chromatoidal bar and peripheral chromatin that we just talked about. For Entamoeba, look at this one. Okay, so it's considered as a non-true amoeba or a non-amoeba, a non-amoebic organism. Okay, now let's talk about the motility of Entamoeba coli and Entamoeba histolytica. Entamoeba histolytica is basically going to move sluggish. The trophozoites, we're talking about the trophozoites. Again, motility, we're talking about trophozoites, okay? All right? So Entamoeba histolytica is sluggish and Entamoeba coli is unidirectional or explosive motility. Okay? So I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to show you what I'm actually, with the use of my hands. Okay, with the use of my hands, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, let's stop the slideshow there for a while. Can you guys see me on camera? Okay. Or mas maganda ang presentation. Can you guys see me on camera? Okay. All right. So, what is this? Is this what? Is this what? Sluggish motility or explosive or multi-directional motility? When you look at it in the microscope and you see a trophozoite moving like this, what is it? Sluggish or multidirectional or explosive?
Explosive po.
Oh, very good, 'di ba? Anak ko talaga manang-mana sa akin talaga, smart na, pretty pa. Manang-mana talaga sa akin 'tong mga anak ko. Okay, very good. All right? But you forgot one thing, Alexis. You have to raise your hand, of course. Hindi lang talaga po. Nagmana ka talaga sa akin. Minsan hindi sumusunod sa direction. Nagmana ka nga sa akin. Alright. So, ganun. Okay? So, explosive, di ba? Multidirectional. So, look at, imagine my fingers, the tips of my fingers are pseudopodia. It will move like this. See? Parang sumasabog nga naman, di ba? So, if you see a parasite if you see a trophocyte that moves like that, automatically write it as a if it's routine, of course. You don't need usually doctors don't ask for the speciation, but in cases where the physician is specialized in infectious medicine, or I think in they want to rule out any endemic organism or anything related to epidemiology, or his specialty is related to epidemiology, they would not ask for this information or speciation. Okay? So sluggish motility, ganun lang. Okay? Gumagalaw, parang ganun lang. Okay? Parang nagsiswim-swim lang siya. Parang ano lang siya. Hindi pa siya Olympic swimmer. Okay? So yun lang yung difference sila. Explosive motility or multidirectional, parang jellyfish. Okay? And if it's moving like this, sometimes gaganon-ganon pa, or unidirectional, that is basically your that is your Entamoeba histolytica or sluggish motility. Okay? Clear? Clear ba? Mark, can you demonstrate again? Can you demonstrate again? I want to see. All right. What are you doing, Mark? Parang pandan niya, parang
yung
buns.
Yung yung explosive motility, tapos yung
Alright.
sluggish.
O, diba? Close, open, close, open. Ayan, ganon. Alright, thank you so much. Alright, love the participation, guys. I love it. Medyo gising ang mga students natin ngayon, Sir Marco, no? Alright, now, differentiate the cytoplasm of Entamoeba coli and Entamoeba histolytica. Sir, bakit pinagdi-differentiate mo yung dalawa? Bakit out of all the organisms of Entamoeba, bakit silang dalawa lang? Kasi sila usually yung nakikita. And mostly in your exams, the examiners are going to they're going to confuse you with information that requires your understanding of these two organisms or the difference between these two organisms. Okay? Most of the cases that you're going to see in exams, usually it has something to do with the differentiation of Entamoeba coli and Entamoeba histolytica. So please be mindful of that one. Inaano ko na sa utak ninyo yan, guys. Okay? So Entamoeba coli is dirty looking. Alright? I think you guys are familiar with this one because it has a lot of because it's usually with a lot of bacteria and yeast around it and cell dendritis. Entamoeba histolytica is clean looking. It doesn't have bacteria and doesn't have a yeast or cell dendritis. And sometimes it does. Entamoeba coli. The reason why Entamoeba coli looks dirty is because there's a lot of cellular fragments inside it. Right? Now, differentiate the karyosome of E. coli or Entamoeba coli and Entamoeba histolytica. So E. coli has a large eccentrically located karyosome. Okay? And Entamoeba histolytica has a centrally located one. Okay? Again, those are the two differences that you need to remember in your exams. Now, let's talk about Entamoeba histolytica a little bit more. The large trace Entamoeba is known as, or Entamoeba histolytica is known as your Entamoeba histolytica only. Okay? The small race version of this one is Entamoeba hartmanni. Okay? This was a question, I think, in a PAMIT quiz show. If you guys are going to participate, this is an important one. So put a gold star on this one. Okay? Pag yung mga child drawn stars lang, yun yung mga kailangan yung alalahanin for the board exam. Pero pag mga gold star, yan yung talagang ilalaban ka sa PAMIT. Okay? Alright? So Entamoeba hartmanni and Entamoeba histolytica. Okay? Now, let's talk about the differentiation of chromatoidal bars. Ano naman yan? Sir, may mga chromatoidal bars na naman. Ano ba? Okay? And let's also differentiate the number of cysts the number of nuclei in mature cysts. Okay? Now, let's talk about chromatoidal bars first. Entamoeba coli has a splinter-like or needle-like or witch broomstick-like chromatoidal bar. Entamoeba histolytica has a coffin-shaped chromatoidal bar. Really, sir? What does a coffin shape look like? Coffin shape yung pang-coffin ng ng mga Amerikano. Okay? Hindi yung parang kabaong lang sa atin sa Pilipinas, yung rectangular. Yung sa kanila is more on yung pag ganon, yung may space para sa head and torso mo. Whilst for Filipinos, it's a rectangular box lang. Yung sa kanila pag ganon, tapos may pababa pa. If you attend a lot of Halloween parties, you probably have seen this type of coffin. Okay? Happy Halloween pala, everybody. I forgot to greet you guys happy Halloween last week. So happy Halloween, okay? Hopefully may nag-cosplay sa inyo kasi I really do enjoy a lot of cosplaying. Anyway, let's move on. Alam ni Sir Marco yan. Nung umuwi ako ng Pilipinas, bumili ako ng costume. Pero hindi ko nasuot kasi hindi pa na-deliver. Nakakainis si Lazada. Anyway, let's move on. Okay? Let's move on to mature cysts. So mature cysts for E. coli have 4 nuclei located in the cysts. For Entamoeba histolytica, it's about 8 nuclei. Okay? What I want you guys to remember is that in your case presentations, you'd usually expect to see like 6 or 7 in the descriptions. If it's anything greater than 4, automatically select Entamoeba histolytica. That's basically it. Okay? Now, extraintestinal amoebiasis affects what organs? The spleen, the lungs, the brain, and the liver. Totoo, sir. Pumupunta pala sila sa brain. Yes. Okay? So, we have 2 organisms that we're going to talk about later. This is known as free-living amoeba or the extraintestinal amoeba. That's something that we're going to discuss later. But in cases where immunosuppression or patient is immunocompromised, these 4 organs are included also. Okay. All right. So please don't forget those things. And the terminology that you need to remember is extraintestinal. Extra meaning it's outside, intestinal meaning it's in the intestines. Okay. Extraintestinal, outside the intestines. Right? Basic medical terminologies. Hopefully you guys remember it. And let's move on. Functions of chromatoidal bars is basically for food storage, 'di ba? Talagang gusto talaga ng mga organisms na to na makasurvive. Okay? All right? Talagang gusto nilang mag-survive talaga. Okay? Now, what's the importance of chromatoidal bars for the technologist? It's the most reliable way of identifying an amoebic organism. Okay? It's the most reliable way in identifying the amoebic organism, or basically what you want to when you want to speciate an organism. Okay, because not all the time you guys are not every laboratory is equipped with PCR amoebic. I mean really, when do we need when do we need to do serological testing for amoeba? 'Di ba? Hindi naman kailangan masyado unless the physician wants to collect data for his epidemiology research, 'di ba? There is really no need for us to do serological testing. But we do have serological tests, don't worry. Okay? So Entamoeba histolytica has a serological test. And basically it is known as the serine-rich E histolytica protein. All right? Serine-rich E histolytica protein. So serine. So, hindi siya pangalan ng babae, ha? Wag masyadong etchosera. Baka mamaya nakalimutan nyo na yung biochemistry nyo, ha? Serine is a what? Serine is an amino acid. Okay? So, huwag nyo kakalimutan. Alright, now, nasa tayo? Virulence factor. Virulence factor of Entamoeba histolytica, the reason why it's very infectious, or it can cause a disease, is basically because of the enzyme hyaluronidase. And from what we've gathered in our discussions in bacteriology, hyaluronidase is also known as the spreading factor. Okay? That's the reason why it can go out of it can survive. It can go in and out of certain places around the human body because it allows the breakdown of hyaluronic acid. Okay. Now, characteristics of the shape or the lesion produced by E. histolytica. It's basically flash shape. This is more or less for pathology. Okay. Histopathology rather. Characteristic shape of the lesions produced by E. histolytica. Okay, it's flask shape. So when you want to expose the intestinal lining of patients who've been infected with amoebiasis, they would form a lesion that is flask shaped. Okay, flask shaped. All right. Classifications of amoebiasis. There are 3 things that you need to remember of the disease. Asymptomatic amoebiasis, ito yung mga tao na well-formed ang pupo pero infectious pa rin sila. Okay? Acute symptomatic amoebiasis, ito na yung medyo may diarrhea. And of course, extraintestinal amoebiasis. Okay? Extraintestinal amoebiasis. Right? So, ano nga ulit yung organs? Isang mabilisang isang mabilisang declamation nga ng organs usually infected with extraintestinal amoebiasis. Isang mabilisan nga. Sinong matapang? Walang matapang. Oh, Mary, magtatawa. Ayan na, Alexis. Oh, talagang anak ko. Sorry, Mary. Anak ko muna.
Spleen, lungs, brain, liver po.
Okay. Wala kang shortcut para kay Amanda? Wala. Sorry, Amanda. Wala kaming maisip na. Hindi ganun kawiti si Sir Manuel kasi galing siya. Pagod ang lola mo. Okay? So, hindi ako makaisip ng something witty today for Amanda. Alright? Now, let's go to the carrier state classification. So, asymptomatic amoebiasis is basically just going to reveal the only findings that you will see in asymptomatic amoebiasis is the cystic stages in the stool. And most of the time, it's often skipped. Okay? Most of the time, it's often skipped. Okay? In stool examinations. That's the only finding that the clinicians would see when they want to diagnose a patient with amoebiasis in its asymptomatic stage. Okay? Now, there are 3 types of acute amoebiasis, of course. And please remember this one, because it's not usually, I don't usually ask for symptomology, but in this case it's important because there's laboratory findings. Amoebic diarrhea is basically patients who have diarrhea 3 to 6 times a day. I know, I've seen that many a time in the hospital. Amoebic dysentery is painful defecation or tenesmus with bloody and diarrheic stool. Sir, ew. And then chronic amoebic dysentery is basically the thickening of the colonic mucosa due to mass formation. Alright? Nagkakaroon na ng mass because the body itself is forming a protective layer towards the amoeba. Okay? So heavy na yung infection, the body can't fight it off. The body is trying to fight it off. And one way for it to do is to thicken the mucosal layer of the colon. Okay? So nakita nyo talaga kung gaano kalala ang amoebiasis. So please, don't drink tap water. Okay? Or don't drink water from anywhere. Alright? Without trying to at least filter it. Okay? Kasi nakakaloka. Ano po yung tenesmus? Painful defecation nga. Diba? Tenesmus. Alright? Tenesmus. It's pain. Si Sir Marco pala ang nagtanong. Tenesmus pala. Tenesmus yata yung tamang spelling. Pero that's what I copied from Henry's. And let me double check if it's the correct spelling, Sir Marco.
Ay, no. It wasn't a, ano,
Yeah,
tawag
feeling.
dito.
Alright. According to Google, this is the feeling that you need to pass tools.
Ako pala yung hindi nakikinig. Nasa nandiyan pala yung description. So,
Alright. So, tenesmus is
hindi
the
kasi ako
feeling.
nakatingin sa lecture.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for making sure that I'm actually correct. Okay. So, tenesmus is the feeling that you need to pass stool even though your bowels are already empty. Kaya nga painful defecation. Okay? Gets nyo, guys, yun. Alam ko meron na sa atin na nahihiya, 'di ba? 'Di ba, Nigel? Yung igit na igit ka na pero wala na talagang laman talaga, Nigel, 'di ba? Ganun. Kasi nga the organisms are doing something in your body or in your colon that causes the peristaltic movement, which is of course an involuntary bodily function. And imagine this. Imagine parang kinikiliti kasi niya yung colon mo. Yun yung parang parang yun yung analogy ko doon. Parang kinikiliti niya yung colon mo kaya parang feeling mo ebak na ebak ka na pero hindi talaga wala talagang laman eh. Anong magagawa natin? And it's very painful. Okay? Alright?
Parang
So,
ano,
yun.
ngalay na yung puwet mo.
Oo. Kasi ano ba, kinikiliti talaga ako nung amoeba, ganon. Wala nang magawa. So from parang it's also like stages. Again, we didn't study a lot of the clinical features of amoebiasis. Okay, even in the latter stages, but I think I would call this stages kasi you would have amoebic diarrhea. If you have amoebic diarrhea, you'll be pooping 3 to 6 times a day. And then if you have amoebic dysentery, it's painful, hence the term tenesmus, and you have bloody diarrheic stools because the body is trying to pass out nothing, but yet the urge to poop is still there. All right, so that is basically and then you go to the last stage, which is chronic amoebic dysentery. Your body can't fight it off, and one of the ways it can do, your body tries to protect itself is trying to form a thick mucosal lining, hence the term mass formation. Okay, so even I guess this is in cases. I guess this is in rare cases. I've never heard of in my line of practice, I've never really seen a patient have a diagnosis written on the paper chronic amoebic dysentery. Usually it's amoebic diarrhea or amoebic dysentery, but chronic amoebic dysentery is quite rare. Although I suppose in the Philippines we might see that in places where there is lack of sanitation and lack of healthcare and medicines. Okay, so yeah, let's move on from pooping 3 to 6 times a day to another thing that you need to remember. Again, this is a pathology question or a histopathology question. What is the term used to describe a tumor-like mass in chronic amoebic dysentery? It's known as an amoeboma. Okay? So from the name itself, you know that it is a growth. Right? It is growth. It's a granuloma formation. Right? That is the reason why we need to do a biopsy of this one. Why? Because it may or may not be benign. Right? It may or may not be what? It may or may not be cancerous or metastatic. Okay? Now, extraintestinal amoebiasis, there are 6 types. I know, class, I know it hurts to look at these terminologies and it hurts to remember these, but it has hepatic, pulmonary, cerebral, amoebic pericarditis, cutaneous amoebiasis, and genital amoebiasis. Sir, pwede din ako magkaroon sa ano ko, sa may ano ko, sa vilat ko, 'di ba? Hindi tayo pwedeng ma-demonetize. Sige, I'm using a different language. 'Di ba? Pwede ako magkaroon ng amoebiasis sa vilat ko. Hindi tayo pwedeng ma-demonetize. Natawa si Nigel. Nakarelate talaga si Nigel. Pwede. Yes, of course. 'Di ba? Pwede ka pa rin magkaroon ng ano. Nigel. Kaya kailangan talaga hindi ka pwede magkaano ha. Okay? Natawa si Nigel na sinabi, Sir, pwede ba? Girl! Tinuod, Day. Pwede talaga, Day. Ganon. Di ba nagbisaya na si Sir kahit hindi siya Bisaya? Tinuod, Day. Tinuod. Pwede ka magkaroon ng amoeba sa genitals mo. Okay? Sa vilat. Okay? Most probably it's the women who get infected by this. Actually, if you Google search it, you'll see it. Okay? I don't want to show it on class because I might be demonetized. Okay? Di ba, Mark? Hindi tayo pwedeng ma-demonetize kasi I found a loophole. Parang sa bubble gang. Di ba? Ano yun? Cooking ina. Parang gano'n. Di ba? Yung mga MTRCB na mga loopholes. Alright? So we have a demonetization loophole. I found a demonetization loophole because I used a different dialect. Okay? Now, let's move on to the body fluids that usually appear in cases of this one might be asked from you in analysis of urine and body fluids or a UBF. Okay, what is the color of the fluid that may be obtained or that may be extracted from patients with hepatic amoebiasis? It's anchovy sauce color. Ano ba yung anchovy sauce color na yan, sir? Ano ba mga kalokohan yan? Imagine patis. Okay, a little bit darker, right? So just a little bit of patis with the dash of toyo, I suppose. I don't know kung may gumagawa nun. Pero yeah, with a dash of toyo. Patis with a dash of toyo. Yun yung description ko sa kaya. Anchovy sauce. I've never really tried anchovy sauce. Hopefully I do get to try it sometime in the future. Alright? What specific portion of the lungs is inhabited by Entamoeba histolytica and pulmonary amoebiasis? Meron siyang tinatambayan, guys. Okay? Wag kayong I think this is not related to medical technology, but let's just for the sake of discussion, we're going to say it's in the lower right lobe of the lungs. Okay? Most of the time, most of the cases. Usually it's in the lower right lobe of the lungs. Okay? Now, we also have cerebral amoebiasis. It's a fatal form of extraintestinal amoebiasis, and the lifespan of a patient or the prognosis of the patient is not really good in these cases because the lifespan of a patient who has been diagnosed with with this type of extraintestinal amoebiasis is 1 to 2 weeks only. All right, so please be mindful that this is the deadliest form of amoebiasis or extraintestinal amoebiasis. Right now, we are going to go with the diagnostic procedures. This is something that you need to remember, guys. Okay, what techniques are used to diagnose amoebiasis informed stool? You need to do concentration techniques. Okay, and concentration techniques includes formalin ethers, zinc sulfate flotation, and methylate formalin iodine concentration techniques. So these are the things that you need to remember. In the hospital that I actually worked in, we are using formalin ether because it's easier to make these. It's easier to make this particular reagent. This one we don't really use zinc sulfate a lot, and methylate formalin is extremely toxic. If the question is asking you which is the most commonly found or the most commonly used reagent for concentration techniques in the clinical laboratory, please answer formalin ether. It is less toxic compared to the other two, and it's readily available to a lot of hospitals. Okay? or medical laboratories. All right. Now, non-pathologic amoeba. Please add a hyphen on that one. Okay. Non-pathogenic amoeba or pathologic amoeba. The smallest form of amoeba is obviously Endolimax nana. Okay? So para hindi nyo makalimutan, 'di ba? Meron tayong Hymenolapis nana, dwarf tapeworm. All right. All right. By the way, guys, because I have not discussed family Trematodea and family Cestodea, I'm going to give you guys a bonus. So after this lecture, I'll also be recording lectures for family Cystodea, Trematodea, and your schistosomes. Okay? So para you just need to watch it at your own time. But I'll be recording these lectures for you guys. So if you want to listen, just listen in on it. Not really compulsory. Okay? It's not really compulsory. If you want to do well in your exams, at least try your best to grab as much of the resources provided to you by CMCC. Diba? Ganon. Diba? All right. Now, let's move on to the next one. Differentiate the karyosomes of different of tropozoites of non-pathologic amoeba. Again, guys, I'm going to discuss a long list of organisms, specifically four to be exact. So Entamoeba coli, as I mentioned before, it is eccentric. All right. Endolimax nana is round dot. Iodamoeba bushlii is a large irregular karyosome with granules. Okay. And Entamoeba gingivalis is centrally located. Okay? So Entamoeba gingivalis. Sir, bakit centrally located din naman si Entamoeba histolytica? Huwag kang charutera. Okay? Gingivalis nga sa gingiva, makakita, pwede mo bang i-diagnose may gingiva? May gingiva ka doon sa stool ang binigay sa'yo. Diba? Ganon, okay? Huwag charotera, okay? Huwag masyadong ma-stress, okay? Kasi rarely itong pinagsasama sa But for the sake of this discussion, we want to differentiate it. We want to differentiate these organisms by the karyosomes, okay? Okay? Clear? Clear? Huwag kayong mag-alala. Hindi yan pagsasamahin si Entamoeba gingivalis at saka si Kasi they're both centrally located. Unless na lang ang question, select the two organisms that have a centrally located. Yan na tayo. Diyan tayo maloloka. Okay? Diyan tayo maloloka. Select both organisms. Yun yung which is probably how I would ask the question, 'di ba? Well, I'm not gonna ask it now because meron na kayong idea, 'di ba? Hindi ko idadagdag doon sa exams yun. Okay? So, huwag kayo mag-alala. Alright, now, makikita ba natin to sa exam? Not sure. Okay? Kasi pag sinabi ko, leakage na yun, di ba? Yeah. What is the characteristic movement of each non-pathologic amoeba? Okay? All of them are sluggish. Okay? All of them are sluggish. Okay? So please be mindful that all of them are sluggish. Oh, sorry. Please change this one. Oh my gosh, I did not change it. This one is multi-directional. Entamoeba coli. Sorry. Entamoeba coli. Please. I will type it also. Please put it in your notes. Okay? Yun yung hinahanap ko kanina na slide. E. coli explosive / multi-directional. Please write it, okay? Please write this as a correction. I was looking for this one. I did not find it earlier. Anyway, let's move on. The cysts of non-pathologic amoeba based on the number of nuclei present. E. coli has 1 to 8. Entamoeba Endolimax nana has 4. Iodamoeba bushlii has 1. And Entamoeba gingivalis, none. Because it's a non-cystic amoeba. It does not form a cyst. Okay? All right. Now, what are the terms associated with the following based on the appearance of the cyst? So, you will see crossed eye, glycogen cyst. These are terms that you need to remember. All right. Now, Endolimax nana has a crossed-eyed cyst. Okay. Iodamoeba bushlii is the one that is termed or coined as the glycogen cyst. Because why? Huwag niyo kakalimutan, iodine stains glycogen. Okay? Glycogen is a form of glycogen granules are findings that you would only see in Iodamoeba bushlii. All right? Now. Let's talk about recent findings. Okay? This is a former member of non-pathologic amoeba. a former member, meaning it was originally considered as non-pathologic, but it was classified, but it was reclassified by the use of an electron microscope because they saw that it is actually a flagellate. Okay, so it's a member of phylum Mastigaphora now because of the flagella. Okay, it's known as Entamoeba fragilis. Okay, Entamoeba fragilis. All right. Now, describe the appearance of the Entamoeba fragilis. It is an organism, or it has trophozoites that have binucleated trophozoites. Okay, binucleated. It usually appears with two chromosomes, with two nuclei. The transmission can occur upon ingestion of pinworm ova. Okay. All right. All right. So the transmission of the organism uh is like a comorbidity. I would call it a comorbidity. I'm not sure if that is the correct terminology. Sir Marco, please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I would call it a comorbidity or a co-infection. Yeah, co-infection. The term that I was looking for is a co-infection, usually. All right, now we're going to talk about opportunistic microorganisms, opportunistic amoeba. Okay, they are still under the family, of the family Rhizopoda, Naegleria fowleri, and of course Acanthamoeba. Okay, Acanthamoeba species. Right, Naegleria fowleri. If you're a fan of watching medical dramas, they would call this as the brain-eating amoeba. Ooh, right? Okay. Ooh. Okay, so it's actually a known public health a known public health issue many places in the United States and even places around Europe. Talaga, sir? Bakit dun sa mga areas kung saan Actually, and the last known case of this one was I think in 2015 when I first came back to the Philippines. The last known case. Okay, so it's still appearing in the because they are considered as free living amoeba. Okay, we'll discuss their life cycle next. Okay, and in the exams it appears very common. It's a very common question in the exams. All right, now let's talk about the other terms associated with opportunistic amoeba. They are also known as free living amoeba. Okay, please add a hyphen on this one because I was a young person when I was making these lectures. Okay. The opportunistic amoeba inhabit what part of the human body? Again, as I mentioned before, brain eating. It actually affects the nervous system. Now, let's talk about Naegleria fowleri. Naegleria fowleri is an organism that has a blunt amoebic pseudopodia. Okay? Blunt amoebic pseudopodia. It is also flagellated with two equally sized anteriorly located flagella. So please don't forget this one. Blunt pseudopodia. It looks like a club. Okay? It's flagellated and it has it's usually flagellated. It's one of the amoebas that we're going to talk about that is a member of the phylum Rhizopoda that has a flagella. Okay? Sir, akala ko ba isa sa mga definitions natin na na member siya ng Rhizopoda or Mastigophora is that it doesn't have. Well, in this case, scientists are very what do you call this? They're not very reliable at this time. Okay? So when they classified this organism under the phylum Rhizopoda, they sort of like forgot that you need to classify this as a flagellate since it has a flagella. But suffice it to say, it belongs under the amoeba family because it has pseudopodia. Okay. Now, describe the cysts of Naegleria fowleri. Among all the organisms that we've discussed, it's the only one that has a double-walled cyst. Okay? Double-walled cyst with a spherical chromatoidal bar. Bakit hindi ka nagpapakita, sir, ng pictures? Ayoko magpakita ng pictures kasi ang una niyong pagdadaanan is PRC muna. Pag mag-apply ka ng ASCP, ang hanapin sa'yo is PRC license mo. So they will not show a picture of this one. Pag mag-attend kayo ng review center ko or review classes ko sa review center, doon ko papakita ang pictures. Okay ba yon? Magandang usapan ba yon? Okay? So sa PRC exams niyo, you will not see pictures. Okay? You will just see a brief descriptions. That's the reason why I don't show pictures of the organisms, because I want you guys to pass first the most important question, the most important exams in your career. Okay? So wag kayong mag-alala. Wala kayong makikita mga pictures sa akin. Exams nyo. Puro case presentations at saka brief descriptions. Kailangan ma-activate ang reading comprehension ng mga students, 'di ba Sir Marco? Kasi isa yan sa mga pinakamalaking problema natin sa Pilipinas, reading comprehension. Bibigyan ko kayo ng example. Sinulat na ni Sir Marco sa Blackboard. Blackboard ba ang gamit sa CMCC? Tagal ko na kasi. Whiteboard pala.
Whiteboard, sir.
Oo. So, sinulat ni Sir Marco sa whiteboard. Get 1 whole sheet of yellow pad. You will be writing an essay. Sir, 1 whole po. Bigla ko yung tatanong 1 whole po. So, di ba? Have you encountered this, Sir Marco? Is it a true finding? Is it a true finding, Sir Marco? Is it a true marking, a true scenario? Do you agree with me in this scenario? Because I've experienced it several times when I was teaching in different institutions. Don't worry, hindi lang CMCC students ang nag-aano niyan, nagko-commit niyan. Huwag kayong mag-alala.
Well, there are even worse cases. Get 1 whole yellow paper. Sir, pwede pong pink.
O kaya yung size na lang ng index card. Sir, wala akong ibang index card. Binigay mo na sa assignment, Sir Marco, 3 days ago. Tapos pagdating on the exact day, sir, wala akong pwede pang 1/4. Diba? Sakit sa ulo, Sir Marco, no? Kaya kailangan talaga yung reading comprehension ng students natin. Kailangan nating
Meron naman, pwede daw bang i-tape na lang yung dalawang lengthwise ng yellow paper?
Oh, di ba? Worst. My God, that's the worst. Palalabas ko. Ako yun talaga, hindi ko mapipigilan ng sarili ko. Palalabasin ko. Kasi baka matawa ako. Siyempre, kailangan ang demeanor natin, hindi katulad sa online class. Professional sa face-to-face si Sir Manuel kasi hindi siya maldita si Sir Manuel sa personal pagkaklase. Okay? Alright, now, let's talk about the cyst of Naegleria fowleri. It's a double-walled cyst, as I've mentioned before. It's a double-walled cyst. You will not see a picture of it because you need to pass your exams in the Philippines first before you go and see the pictures. Okay? So, you've already seen it probably in your textbooks. Just go back to your textbooks. But in our exams in the Philippines, you are required to remember the appearances. So, it's the only one that we're going to discuss with a double-walled cyst with a spherical chromatoidal bar. All right. Now, structures located in the outer wall of the Naegleria fowleri species is that it has an ostiole or a pore. May mga butas siya. Okay? When you look at it in the microscope, you'll see 3 to 8 pores or an ostiole. We call it an ostiole. Okay? And the disease that it causes is PAM. Who here knows the meaning of PAM? PAM. Diba? Para hindi nyo makalimutan. Who here knows the meaning of PAM? Isinend na hopefully na isend na sa inyo ni Sir Marco or ni Segi yung lectures niyo. What is the meaning of PAM?
I did upload it na.
Hindi pa? Okay.
Upload ko na.
Okay. Nigel said, mali ang spelling ng amoebic. Okay. Pero okay lang. Tama naman. Mali ang spelling ng amoebic. Hi ha. Ang spelling baka may identification si Sir Marco ha. But Nigel is correct. Okay, so it's primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. That is correct. And you will see a lot of findings, laboratory findings in PAM. It could be you could see this case in analysis of urine and body fluids, or a case in clinical chemistry. Okay, so pleocytosis, an increase in PMN, and an increase also in CSF protein. Ano ba yung mga CSF protein na mini-measure natin? Albumin and total protein, right? Albumin globulin ratio also in the CSF can also be done in the clinical laboratory. Okay? So, CSF protein, I just wrote CSF protein in general. Okay? Because in your exams, you might see a CSF protein value there. Total protein, albumin globulin ratio, and they will write the normal values. You're there to interpret. Oh, okay, this is an increase or a decrease. Okay, and then after that they're going to discuss or describe the peripheral smear or the general smear appearance of the CSF of that patient. And pleocytosis, they would often write pleocytosis, or they would give a breakdown of these blood cells that they see. So for example, lymphocytosis, 90% lymphocytosis, um 10% neutrophilia, blah blah blah. Okay? So it could be in a form just like that, or they could write pleocytosis. Okay? So baka mamaya kasi may lumapit kay Sir Marco pagka nagbigay ako ng exam ninyo eh. Sir, bakit sabi ni Sir Manuel pleocytosis? Ba't nakalagay dito sa may lecture? Bakit nakalagay dun sa question? 90 numbers ang binigay. Hi. The term pleocytosis means there is an increase in PMN. Okay? Polymorphonuclears. Okay? So pag nilagay ko doon neutrophils, yes, very good tayo doon. Pag nilagay ko doon basophils, mataas din ang levels, at saka yung eosinophils, mataas din ang level. Kasama siya kasi polymorphonuclears. Pero pag nilagay ko doon monocytes at saka lymphocytes, obviously that is not considered pleocytosis. Okay? So increased PMN, polymorphonuclears. Okay? Clear? Clear ba 'yan? Clear ba, Nigel? Clear, Alexis? Clear, Minty? Clear ba, Eliza? Who else is here? Who else is showing their faces on camera? Anyway, clear ba, Mary? Girl, wala akong narinig. Clear ba si Mary?
Yes po, sir.
Oh, yan. Yan ang gusto kong marinig. Diba? Ganon. Yes po, sir. Alright, now, let's move on to chlorination of pools. This is, if you guys want to take public health as your masters, you're going to be asked this question. I'm not sure, Sir Marco, if your masters is public health, but I remember a friend of mine who took public health said,
Please lang. Mine is MSMT.
MSMT. Ay, ako talaga Sir Marco. Ulti lang kasi ang school na nagtuturo ng MSMT, tapos ang mahal-mahal pa ng ginagamitan pa niya tayo ng Lasallian voice niya. Nakakainis. Okay?
Oh, please lang, don't call me MPH.
meron kasi akong kaklase na MPH. Sabi niya nag-take siya ng MPH, and chlorination of pools is actually part of their curriculum, especially in, I think, preventive public health safety standards lecture in, I think, UP. They told them chlorination of pools is not an effective way to destroy Naegleria floreri. I added this in your exams because remember that if you are a bachelor's degree graduate of public health, you're also eligible to take the medtech board exams, right? And some of the examiners actually took MPH. So they might ask you questions about pH, public health. I'm talking about public health. So the reason why I want you guys to remember this is aside from the fact that it may be asked in your exams, it may also be helpful in providing maybe you would be employed as a public health safety officer in the future. So this could be important. This could be an important piece of information that you might have in the future. Okay, so chlorination of pools is not an effective way to destroy Naegleria fowleri. The best way to destroy it is through what method? The reagent that we use is blank. Right? What reagent do we use? What reagent is used rather? We use the term salination. You use saline. Okay? And saline is basically sodium chloride, and it's 7%. Talaga, sir? Oo. Kaya nga hindi ka pwede. Kung mahilig kang mag-swimming sa mga maduduming lugar, specifically gubat sa syudad, hindi kasi sinisiraan ko ang gubat sa syudad, ha. Hindi tayo ma-demonetize, Mark, kasi kasi Tagalog eh. Gubat sa syudad. Hindi ko alam kung nakapunta na kayo doon. Yung pool nila medyo gray na. Hindi na ako, third year, nag-aaral ako ng parasitology noon. Yun lang talaga yung pinakamalungkot na swimming trip na inattendan ko nung buong college life ko. Kasi nag-aaral ako ng parasitology. And yung mga kaklase ko pa rin, mga nursing students yon, in-invite lang nila ako. Sabi naman, well, ba't hindi ka nagsiswimming? Hindi ko masabi sa kanila kasi baka mamaya sabihin nila sa akin, i-cancel na nila ang swimming party namin. So, hindi nila ako nagsalita. Tapos, after ng swimming namin, kasi may inaral kami sa school na pag highly chlorinated ang pool, pwede ka pa rin makakuha ng infection. And in this case, it's a brain-eating amoeba, which is known as Naegleria fowleri. O, diba? Siyempre, magmukha ka dun bida-bida. Sabihin ko dun, gitna ng party, nag-e-enjoy sila, swimming ng swimming, naka-bathing suit pa yung mga babae, diba? Tapos sasabihin mo, meron palang pwede ka makakuha ng brain-eating amoeba dyan. Ang dilim-dilim nung tubig sa sa pool. 'Di ba? Yung halos hindi mo makita yung tile sa ilalim. Oh, syempre ang lola mo ang arte-arte, 'di ba? Kasi nakapasok, magmula nung pumasok ako sa medtech, umarte na ako eh. 'Di ba? Hindi na ako kumakain ng isaw, mga ganyan. Yan ang sumira ng buhay ko eh. Masaya naman ako talaga nung nasa nursing ako eh. 'Di ba? Happy go lucky ako, bahala kung ma-infect or hindi. Then nung transfer ako sa sa nurse sa medtech, ayun na, ang dami na nating inaral. Okay? So please don't forget, salination, saline ang ginagamit. Kaya pag magsiswimming kayo, sa beach na lang tayo. Okay? Pero may problema tayong isa pa. Inaral natin sa bacteriology, yung mga family members ni cholera, 'di ba? Yung mga vibrio na 'yan, pwede mag-cause. So, wag na lang tayong mag-swimming kung gano'n, 'di ba? 'Di ba? Okay? So, 'yan. Let's move on to our next discussion, which is about Acanthamoeba. So Acanthamoeba, this is a condition, causes two types of conditions. It's if you're studying for your histopathology, you're going to encounter these two terms. This is known as gay, hindi yun bading, okay, and keratitis, okay, or amoebic keratitis. So gay stands for granulomatous amoebic encephalitis. Okay, and keratitis in contact lens solutions. Okay, so this is usually a question that would be a situational. This amoeba is going to be in the form of a situation, or it could be in a case study. So please don't forget an Acanthamoeba species. Now, we have to remember the trophic stages of Acanthamoeba. It's one of the only organisms that is a protozoa. It's one of the few protozoans that have hyaline projections. You don't need to remember the number, class. Okay? I don't want you guys to remember the number. If you see the term hyaline projections, automatically select Acanthamoeba from the multiple choice questions. It's the only one. All right? It's the only one that has hyaline projections in its trophozoites. Okay? And it is characterized by a single large vesicular charysome. Okay? Now, the term for the hyaline projections, the reason why it's known as Acanthamoeba is because it has acanthopods. Okay? It's used for the movement. Right? So, my other organisms, the other organisms that we discussed, they have pseudopods. This one has an acanthopod. Okay? Those projections that we talked about. Okay? Now, describe the cystic stage of Acanthamoeba. The Acanthamoeba is double-walled as well, but please don't forget that it has folds inside. Okay, so if it's double-walled and it has pores, okay, if it's double-walled and it has pores, that is Naegleria fowleri. But if it's double-walled and it has folds inside, okay, it is Acanthamoeba. It has an inner endocyst and an outer ectocyst that folds in the endocysts. Okay, so please don't forget that it's also double-walled. Okay, but the only difference is that it doesn't have a pore. All right, now the culture media. We have culture media. It's one of the few organisms that it's one of the few protozoans rather that I'm going to discuss that has a culture media. It's PYGC agar or PYGC media. It's protease peptone yeast extract glucosystine media. I know ang haba. Ang haba, sir. Bakit ganun? 'Di ba? It's protease peptone. Peptone yan, hindi peptop ha. Peptone. Yeast extract glucose cysteine media. PYGC agar. Or PYGC media. Okay? Pwede tayong magpatubo niyan. Okay? Now, phylum Mastigophora. Please don't forget they are flagellates. Okay? And there are two types of them. We have the intestinal and the genital flagellates. Oo, yes, Nigel. Pwede ka ding magkaroon ng flagellates sa Vilat. Okay? Di tayo madidemonetize, Mark, kasi nga, a different term, a different language, okay? A different dialect, okay? Intestinal and genital flagellates, okay? Vilat pati ang ginamit ko, hindi siya yung actual word. Alright? So, walang charotera, okay? Now, example of intestinal flagellates, and genital flagellates. These are basically what we're going to discuss today. Enteromonas hominis, Embadomonas intestinalis, Chylomastix mesnili, Giardia lamblia, Trichomonas vaginalis, Trichomonas hominis, Trichomonas tenax. Okay, you guys have already been introduced to this in your previous classes in parasitology. So hopefully you're still familiar with Chylomastix mesnili and Giardia lamblia as well as the Trichomonas species. I just added Enteromonas hominis and Embadomonas intestinalis. These are new terminologies probably, right? Or new species of organisms that you've encountered. Now, the Mastigophora or Mastigophytes has an organelle which is basically a flagella. Okay? That's the motor organelle or the movement apparatus or the motile apparatus. Okay? The motor components has two components. It has an axonym and the actual flagella. The axonym basically allows it to move. Okay? And it has a neuromotor component known as a kineroplast. Okay? It has a neuromotor component known as a kineroplast. And the neuromotor component of the flagella includes two parts. It has a parabasal body and a blepharoplast. A blepharoblast. Blepharoblast. I think a bit of a tongue twister. I'm terribly sorry. Parabasal body and blepharoplast. So neural component. So basically this is the parts. Okay? Parang parts of a motor. Okay? Not really important in the exams, but you might be asked this in your exams with us here that I'll be giving you guys. Okay, so I always start with the morphology, of course. Now, let's talk about Giardia lamblia and Chylomastix mesnili. Okay, now what is the characteristic shape of the trophozoites of Giardia lamblia? It is teardrop or pear shape. Okay, and what about the motility? The motility is a falling leaf motility. What about the appearance? It is characterized as an old man with glasses. Okay? Falling leaf or jerky motility. Okay. So, let me end the slideshow and I will ask people in the class to demonstrate what it looks like to have a falling leaf or jerky motility. Okay? So, we're going to stop with how many pairs of flagella. We're going to answer that later. I want to see somebody use their hands to demonstrate this. There is a prize. Huwag kayo mag-alala. There is a prize for this one. Di ba, Sir Marco? No? May prize to. Usually may prizes akong binibigay for those people who just recently joined. Alright. So, cameras on the ready. If you want to participate, raise your hand. What is the appearance of... by the use of your hands, okay? Kailangan hindi disqualified ka kapag malabo ang mo syempre, tsaka hindi nakikita yung kamay mo. Or sorry dun sa mga mga klase nating disabled, hindi kayo pwedeng mag-participate. Sorry. Okay? So,
bakit ka disabled?
Sir Marco, bakit ka tumawa? That is not something you should laugh at. My goodness.
I'm not laughing at them. I'm laughing at your joke.
Ikaw talaga, Sir Marco, ha? Alright, so, if anybody wants to participate, you can raise your hand right now and show me what is and demonstrate to me what is falling leaf motility. Sige, raise your hand right now. Wala talaga? Ayan na, talaga si Marie Kay Sabado. Hindi pa niya nakukubra yung niya, nag-participate ka agad. Meron niyang prize sa akin from last week lecture eh. Di ba? Nag-email talaga siya. Babasahin ko yung email niya, guys, ha. Ang email niya. But before you demonstrate, Sir Marco, babasahin ko muna yung email niya. Sir Marco, wait lang, ha. Babasahin ko yung email niya para sa inyo, class.
Go, sige.
Siyempre, last two lectures na natin to, kailangan meron tayong maperform na memories. Kasi when we form memories, we tend to remember the lectures also, di ba? Minsan sumasama siya. Babasahin ko yung email ni ni Sabado. Hindi pala si Sabado yun. I told my crush tuloy. Sorry. So sabi niya, Sir Manuel, for the prize, from your smart na and pretty pa na student. O, di ba? MTP. What's MTP? What's
Sir, Makay yan.
Makay
Pro
pala?
I M-Top class.
Ano yung M-Top class? Ano yung ibig sabihin nun? Please enlighten me. Hindi ko alam yung M-Top kasi kung ano-ano yung papasok sa utak ko when I hear that, 'di ba, Valiant? No? 'Di ba yung
Sir,
mga
yun po yung class
M-Top?
natin ngayon.
M-Top pala ang tawag doon. Okay, walang ibig sabihin 'yon. Alright, namaki. Sige. For the price. Ganda yung spelling. For the price, I want you to demonstrate falling leaf motility. Ayan, ganyan ang spelling ng for the price natin. Oh, ano na? Demonstrate. Walang hiya-hiya. Grabe namang leaf yan sa ere, nagiging stagnant. Grabe namang leaf yan. Ulit, both hands, girl. Both hands. Ayan. Ide-demonstrate niya, Sir Marco. Ayan. Nasaan na, girl? Hindi ko makita ang kamay mo. Ayan na. Both. Gusto ko nagkikiyomi ka, girl. Ganon. Ayan na. Parang ang saya i-TikTok no, Sir Marco. Dapat, ano. Ayan. Hindi man namin makita, ma'ams. Ano ba yan? Huh? Nagigigil si Valiant. Gusto niya gayahin eh. Huh? Ngumunguya. Ano ba naman to? Hindi marunong ng falling leaf motility? Ganun lang ito.
Have you seen a leaf fall, Miss Sabado?
Girl! Ano ba? Ulit! Wala kang prize pagka hindi maganda yung yung falling leaf
Sir,
motility
absent
mo.
ata ako nun.
Ano, Sir Marco, bibigay ba natin sa kanya yung prize?
No, I'm not convinced.
You're not
Hindi yun
convinced
yun.
with Sabado's demonstration. I'm terribly sorry, Miss Sabado. Alright, we'll go with somebody else. Alright, who wants to raise your hand if you know. Oh, yan na yung anak kong isa. Anak, go! Sorry, wait lang muna, James Paul. Ayun. Bali
Ito po.
yung ano niya, yung leaf niya, bali yung leaf niya. Okay.
Gagan. Umiikot pa po siya ganun. Ano ba?
Hoy, ano yung dinadakot mo, girl? Ano yan? Girl!
No, gano'n po yung shape niya po. Parang hook.
Okay.
Tapos, umiikot pa po kasi siya. Di ko maikot na 360 yung kamay ko. Just iikot.
Okay, sige. We'll leave that to for later, okay? So mamaya muna. Tingnan natin kung mas maganda ang demonstration ni James Paul. Sige, James Paul. Pakitaan mo nga kami, James Paul. Pending pa yung price mo, Alexis, ha? Pag mas maganda yung kay James Paul. And our judge is Sir Marco, okay? Kasi siya yung mag-aano sa inyo ng practicals, eh. Okay, so nasa na si James Paul? James Paul, where are you? Ano, wala si James Paul. Ano, bibigay na natin yung price kaya.
Nandiyan siya, sir. Nandiyan, nag-demo na.
Nagde-demo ba? Hindi ko makita. Nasaan ba? Mag-open ka kasi ng mic mo para lumabas yung mo. Yung picture mo. Nasaan ba? Open ka ng mic mo. Ayan, ayan na si James Paul. Okay, James Paul. Hoy, ano naman yan? Sir Marco.
Falling leaf, sir. Falling leaf.
Okay, falling leaf. Anong kaguluhan yan, James Paul? James Paul. Napalunok ako na nabigla ako. Sir Marco, sino kay Alexis or James Paul sa tingin mo makakakuha ng prize?
Yung kay James Paul, para siyang nag-interpretative dance na
London. Parang nagti-TikTok lang na.
Sir.
How come every time I come around my London, ganun yung niya eh. Di ba very Fergie? Fergie song yan eh. Sino so si Alexis?
Wala bang ibang
Walang iba?
volunteer?
Oh, sige pa.
Tatlo
May
lang.
entry, huwag kayo mag-alala.
lang po.
May entry kayo, huwag kayo mag-alala. So, pag-iisipan namin ni Sir Marco kung sino bibigyan namin. So, unfortunately, Makay, you are out in the running according to your professor. Sino pa ang pwedeng mag-demo? Bilis! Para magbigay tayo ng prizes. Diba? Ng prizes. For the prize nga. Ayan, for the. Diba? Ano? Walang iba na ibibigay na namin dun sa tatlo. Ano ba, si Mark, parang hindi pa, hindi pala. Immune pala si Mark sa mga prices ko kasi meron na siyang Sobra naman na yan. O sige, ako magtatawag. Pag ako nagtawag, bahala kayo. Kailangan ninyo
Si ano nga, si
Sino?
Salian.
Ay, oo, ayan na yung ka-riding in tandem ni Ayun, nasa na si Salyan. Sige, nasa na si Salyan. Si Arnie ba yon yung ka-riding in tandem? Nasa na yon? Arnie, where are you? Ay, nawala. Sir Marco, wala.
Nandiyan.
Ayan, Magpakita ka sa